Welcome back to MSP Confidential. Always a pleasure to have you come and hang out with us for a conversation. Today, I welcome Mr. Jason Slagle, President at CNWR. How are you, man? Good to have you finally on the show.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's been I don't know why this week has seemed like forever compared to a normal week. It has been very busy. Yeah.
You know, I don't know that I feel that at all lately. It just feels like every week passes faster than the previous week. Maybe it's a factor of age and how time just disappears. My son, in the meantime, well, you know how I notice this is because we tend to plan vacations like a year and a half out, 2 years out.
hmm
And when we talk to him about, participating in the decision process, he's like, wait, this is like 2 years from now? And he's got this like look of just dumbfounding. What are you guys talking about like 2 years from now? It
Yeah.
feels like forever for him, but two
Well,
years.
percentage of life.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's actually a good way to look at it, no
Yeah.
doubt. Well, you and I were chatting about this idea of if the whole industry is standardizing to like deliver this very similar feeling and similar looking baseline of service, what is left to compete on besides price? And you mentioned this has been living rent free in your head. Maybe talk to me a little bit about why it's been living rent free. What are you struggling with or grappling with at the
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah, I don't even know. So this was born out of a conversation I had with somebody, and honestly, I can't even tell you who I had the conversation with or where. It was at a recent event, and the the concept here is that we seem to have as an industry, we all seem to be chasing things that on their surface seem good ideas, right? It's like, oh, of course I want to automate as much as possible. Of course I want to reduce my staff spend. Of course, I want to use AI tools and stuff to augment, right? But the reality of it is that if we normalize some of those tools, right, and that is the level of service that we're going to deliver, then everyone will get there, right? And so it's been in my head because if we drive to that point where all of us are delivering the exact same service in the exact same way, essentially using the exact same tools, then the player with the largest economies of scale will win. And that's not me.
Yeah, you kind of pose that same question. Like, is there an opportunity to out innovate or out compete with a large platform player that is getting those big economies of scale? And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that would say yes necessarily.
I yeah, even with we don't even have to talk about the economies of scale, right? It's like they can afford to hire the $300,000 AI expert that can, tune their stuff to be 20% better than my can. I can't hire that human,
Hmm.
right? So it's one of those things. And, honestly, there may be some doom and gloom here, right? Because we've been hearing this in this industry, like literally as long as the industry's been existing, that this is going to drive it to the end. This is going to drive it to the end. The commoditization. It never happens, but I feel like this time it feels different, and maybe it feels different for everybody every time they go through it.
Well, how much do you think it's a factor maybe of the relationship too? And I guess this is to the point of your comment about this, that if we have to be working on the relationship. And I find that people go down these interesting maybe ebbs and flows of all tech all the time, all automation, all the things, only to realize that to the customer, really the relationship was the thing that mattered the most, because even if you think you're doing great things, to them you're probably exactly the same as everybody else, but they like
Yeah.
you. So maybe this is one way that to easily outcompete a large platform player for the small person, the small MSP. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, right? Like, there's definitely, I mean, all of us talk about this and that and the other thing. In the end, we're a relationship business, we're a customer service
Yeah.
business, right? And I think that the MSPs that lose sight of that in the end fail. Like, they don't do well, and they customers churn away because they're just numbers. But, right, like there are more complicated pieces to that. I mean, I'll tell you that consistently, I'm in Toledo, Ohio, and a large number of our smaller MSPs have gotten swallowed up by the big players, right? Like the big platform players, or even some of the smaller roll-ups. And it's been a windfall to me generally. because as soon as those contracts end, those customers largely all churn away. And the reason is, their service isn't quite as good. There's no one local left to talk to your point, right? But generally, they tend to deliver a cost optimized is the word I'll use version of the services versus what I do, right? Like they're driving 100% to efficiency, to numbers, to playing the prices right game with the SLA, to delivering just in time, just enough service to meet the contractual value, and not generally looking to exceed where that exceeding costs money. But if we start driving to these other tools, then we're all driving to that, right? Like these tools are generally driving to like a standardized, commoditized version of of the service. And I don't know if we look back in history that any of the industries that have largely commoditized would have been excited to do that as they drove down that road as we seem to be.
Yeah. Well, there's always some kind of surprise angle that maybe catches people off guard. And we were talking about this a little bit backstage in the context of pricing transparency because, I think the cost of optimization right now matters because we're maybe still in the shadows of pricing confusion, and
Yeah.
what is the customer actually paying for in the equation of the relationship with their
Yep.
IT provider. And I don't think that there's a ton of clarity on that. It's it's an outcome. Sure, it's like, hey, our stuff is up, our systems are working, but what is factored into that pricing beyond that is kind of a bit of a
Yeah.
murky area. And so I think when you talk about cost optimization, it makes sense in that perspective because you're not having to deal with the actual customer facing price just yet. But
Yeah.
at a point where, and we're seeing this with the big consulting firms, they're getting called out, the Deloittes, the whoever, PwCs, they're getting called out because they're claiming all these efficiencies with AI, but their pricing is not changing. So customers
Yeah.
are getting them to speak to task on that. And so I think the same will probably happen is like, well, we know you're doing everything with AI. This means your cost model is changed entirely. Why are we still paying the same?
Yeah.
And that's going to be maybe this interesting contentious point at some future time. But what your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but I mean, I think you just described business, right? Like,
Mm.
I mean, over my career and over my life, I'm 46, and you see these companies, a fuel surcharge gets added, gas prices go down, fuel surcharge generally doesn't go away, right? That price generally moves in one direction, and that is up, and the companies just take that additional money is profit and revenue, in I do believe that us as small players, we may have some protection because of that, because I am willing to lower prices, right? If my costs go down significantly, then I can compete on price a little more because I don't compete on price at all right now. I'm one of the most expensive options in the area because I have a very dialed in ICP, and we know what our security stack looks like, and it's bigger than a lot of my competitors. And we support line of business, and a lot of my competitors don't, so my soft costs are higher than in
Mm.
generally, right? So I've already had to account for some of that transparency, like why are you more expensive than your competitors? I've already combated that a little bit, but as my costs go down, I 100% expect that the pricing to the customers will go down. I do not expect that some of our venture capital backed friends will take that same approach. They will take it as profit, and maybe that is a saving grace for me.
What why or what do you answer to customers that ask you why you're more expensive? Like how do you? I'm curious if you willing to
Yeah,
share. Maybe.
it
Uh,
it's a really easy conversation. I go, okay, look at their website and look at their hourly rate, and look at my website and look at my hourly rate. The rates are the same. So if our hourly rates are both the same and I'm more expensive, there's one of two things has to be the case. Either I have higher costs than they do, which could be the tools I use to support you are deeper, or I include more in what I do without charging you, so my labor is higher, or I'm taking considerably more than they are as profit. And you have to decide if you think I'm just trying to screw you, I promise you I'm not, right? The difference there is that I price my stuff fairly, so I don't have to be looking for reasons to charge you additional revenue and say, well, that's out of scope, that's out of the contract. And my security stack tends to be a little deeper than a lot of my competitors, and some of those tools are relatively expensive, right? So that is the differentiation I drive to there when I have those
Mm.
conversations. Is the conversation comes down to, hey, if our hourly costs are willing to charge you are the same, or in some cases mine's actually less than theirs, then you explain the math of why your prices are different. Like they're giving you less service than I'm giving you is generally what the case is.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, the murky area that I was maybe referring to, that the client may still not understand how the service is
Yeah.
different, really, and it's the kind of thing that is a very big leap of faith for the customer in the
Yeah.
beginning to just assume the service will be better and hope for the best, right?
Yep.
The maybe the an interesting angle to this discussion is the compliance angle, and I know you're passionate about compliance and the security stuff, and so I'm curious if you're seeing that AI is helping you better position security and compliance than how you were able to position security and compliance before.
I mean, AI is helping me better position literally everything I do. Security and compliance are obviously are a large part of that. From that side, there is a big piece of it, right? Like I can take policy documentation and using tools like, your control map and other tools, some stuff I've written, some prompts and stuff I've written internally, do some amount of gap assessment on what they have already to like ease the amount of that goes into that. We follow quote unquote best practices, although, best practices are a dime a dozen. We charge for assessments, right? So
Mm.
I'm actually quite curious, and you might know what percentage of the industry actually does. But my costs there have gone down considerably to the point where I'm starting to basically tear down all my assessment pricing because of it. Because the AI from a compliance and security standpoint, because that's what my assessments largely are, I'm leaning heavily on AI to consume like Nessa scans plus Prowler scans. I collect all this data, hundreds and hundreds of megs or gigs of data, and then previously I had to send a human sorting through it to figure out like, okay, uh, it, of this dumpster fires I'm juggling, which one is the most important dumpster fire to tell you is the most important thing for you to actually fix first? Because
Mm.
again, assessments fall into two boats. Either the client has a good MSP and they're pretty okay, or it's juggling dumpster fires and figuring out which of the 8,000 things that are absolutely on fire on their network is the most important for them to fix. I've been leaning on AI heavily to parse through some of that and help me make recommendations. So the number of hours I spend basically in the analysis and reporting part of that it's probably half what it was even 6 months ago.
So maybe I'll bring up a question I ask a lot of people over time, which is, do we have a challenge with the inputs versus outputs of our cost context or cost model in the MSP industry? And what I mean by that is that, like, is the hourly rate really dead, is kind of what I'm getting to, because when these tools effectively obviate the need for calculating things on an hourly basis, like
Mhm.
what becomes the actual monetary measure of these things? And so I'm curious if you think about this at all, and where you see your own evolution happening there.
I
Because,
mean,
like, my point is the output of those scans was not the value that the customer is here to receive, and like the parsing of them was not
no.
the value the customer is supposed to receive here. But that
Yeah.
was a lot of how you were pricing the service to begin with, is how long it took to produce the output. And so this is my point. So hours in, hours out, or hours in, business outcomes, and some other measure out is kind of the question.
Oh, it's a mix, right? Like, we backstage had a little bit of this conversation about workstation onboardings, and we can go there later, but it holds true here too, right? Like, I am not yet passing all of those savings onto the customers. And part of that reason is, I have always done the assessments that I do at below market rate, right? Typically, typically they're half of what I would charge for market rate because they're essentially a loss leader because additional work comes out of them, right? So it has allowed me some latitude. But I mean, to your point, yeah, the customer is paying for an outcome. The customer is not paying for that, right? But my costs are largely driven by time. So yeah, the costs are going down, right? Like in the cost of the customer will go down, but I don't know that they will go down proportionately to the amount of time I'm saving to do that.
Sure.
And part of that is, at some point some of this is not me just taking an off-the-shelf product. Like I'm developing some of these tools and there's R&D and costs associated with doing some of that work that needs to be recovered over time. And some of that is, the value to the customer hasn't notably gone down a lot, right? I'm still delivering the same amount of the value to the customer. It's just costing me less to do that,
Sure.
right? So capitalism says I should benefit from all of that cost. I don't think that's fair, right? But I don't also think it's fair that the customer benefits from all of that cost reduction, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm okay if my margins go up 10% on these assessments. I mean, right now I try to run them at like break even or very low margin. If I suddenly go from 10% to 30% margin on them and get closer to where I probably want to be, and the customer still is paying half of what they were paying before, then everybody wins.
Maybe there'll be a day when you a little tranche of customers where you offer them to pay whatever they think is fair and see where that goes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that could that could be right. I mean, the reality of it is that I'm doing a $1,500 assessment in providing. I've actually some local banks and other things that are required to get some of these security scans. I'm delivering an assessment to them for 2,500 bucks that they were paying Qualsys or somebody else $10,000 to do. Right. So in many cases, for outside of our weird small business MSP space, customers are paying way more than I'm charging already for these. So I'm already providing a value there, right?
Yeah.
Like, do I feel terrible if I raise that, if I keep that at 2,000? If my cost cut in half and instead of going to 1,250, I go to 2,000, I don't know how terribly bad I feel about that,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm apparently just worse at business than those big players are.
Well, you asked the question also of what if I knew what percentage of the industry is charging for assessments, and I feel like there is definitely the operational ladder or maturity ladder plays a role there. I think as you're new and trying to figure things out, the assessment is maybe a bit of a lead magnet, an opportunity to get a customer in the door and sell something else, and you might offer it for free or rebate it if they sign a contract, etc. There's all these
Yeah.
different areas, and it's probably hard to put on the hat of hindsight to think about how you used to think about this. But
Yeah.
have you gone through your own evolution of like where the value of the assessment sat?
Oh yeah, we used to do the free assessments using the tool in the space that I won't name here. That produced a report that you were instructed not give the client, which honestly you weren't giving it to the client because it was largely worthless anyways. That said like you have 894 fear units. Like there's no scale. Like is it 800? This is all absolute versus relative measure. If it's 894 out of a million, it's pretty good. If it's 894 out of 1,000, it's pretty bad, right? It's
Did you say fear units?
yeah, fear units. Yeah.
That's the unit of measure is fear.
Yeah, correct. And so we kind of moved on from that, and where I landed to, because I mean, this is an objection we get all the time too. You're going to charge me to provide a quote. It's like, no, I'm going to charge you to provide a roadmap, right? And that roadmap is, grading where you're at now. You take it with you, like real effort goes into it, and the way I kind of drive to that is, if it's free, what kind of resources do you think I'm putting behind it? Right? Like I'm sending out a sales guy or my least technical engineer for as short of amount of a time to run an automated tool that's going to give you your report. Right. Like, and then I'm going to try to sell you based on the fear of that report. I, our assessments right now, although it's trending down because of AI, they were running 12 to 20 hours on the low end, right? Like a non-zero amount of time goes into data collection, assessment survey questions, sitting with you, going over your policies and procedures and all the GRC stuff that goes into that, right? Analyzing the output, writing a report. I mean, I'm delivering 12-page report plus hundreds of pages of appendix that has scan data in it. Like that was bespoke and written. And now I use a tool called PlexTrack that helps with that from the security space. But like a not, and there's QA, like there's an entire process that goes into this thing, and it's all technical resources doing it, right? So I
Mm.
don't feel bad asking somebody to pay for that because I'm delivering the assessment value stands alone.
Yeah. Well, it's a far cry from what we would have been doing for an assessment again,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
years ago. So obviously the complexity of the process has changed, and more vectors need to be looked at today than ever before. And so I
Oh
think,
yeah.
yeah, this is all increasing complexity and cost as a result. Do you think the average SMB cares about an assessment still?
No, I don't think they do at all. Uh, with some few exceptions, right? If there is any compliance binding to them at all, they
Mm,
might, or if they've had an incident, they might. Or there's a third category. If they're unhappy with their current IT company, they
yeah.
probably do, right? Like they're looking for somebody to tell them, like they suspect who they're using isn't great, right? So I'm a third party validation that they're not great, and that's it's good there. But yeah, generally, I think that much like our world, there's operational maturity in most small businesses, and the bottom half of the industry doesn't care at all. They don't care about computers. They don't care about any of that stuff. They care about the thing that they are doing in their business, and all of these are just tools to like solve a problem. Like they don't really give it any more thought than, a mechanic gives a wrench. Right, like most mechanics, it's just a wrench. You just go out and buy another one. Like the really high-end mechanics may spend thousands of dollars on those really nice snap-on
Mm.
tools, right? Because but it's just a tool to get a job done. Technology is, and the same ones that would buy the snap-on tools probably care about the assessment to know how they're doing.
Yeah, Aaron Hayes, thanks for the comment. Aaron said if people have skin in the game, and this is part of what I meant a bit by the operational maturity ladder, is that you realize that psychologically speaking, when the customer pays for something like this, they maybe have a little bit more skin in the
Yeah.
game, and therefore are usually more invested. Know your worth and feel confident and comfortable charging for an assessment. The know your worth thing, it's a valuable thing to be asking oneself regular intervals of time. This is such an interesting potential dark place for a lot of folks because, like, the imposter syndrome, the pace at which you kind of have to keep up with things, like, you're a smart guy. I'm sure even you have moments of doubt in this area. It's like, do I know everything that I should know here? Like, what is happening effectively? This is one of the reasons I decided to get out of the thing as an MSP, because like I was already behind and I didn't see a world in which I was going to catch up to it or stay on top of the ongoing
Mhm.
changes. And so this I think somebody like me suffers through this because I don't want to, like, the duty of care piece is important, right? And so if
Yep.
I can't serve the customer appropriately and my baseline for that is really high, then I'm failing across the board. Like,
Uh, you are not the norm. Uh, I have crippling, terrible imposter disorder. I didn't speak for a long time because I didn't think I had anything useful that anyone wanted to hear. And it took a lot of people, Kyle Hanslow, and I'll credit with a lot of it. It took a lot of people telling me, like, no, there's a lot of stuff that other people don't know to get out there and do it. But I mean, that's a thing I fight with all the time. And the knowing your worth thing is a very, very, very long journey to get there.
mm,
Right. Like, but to your point, like we had our all hands today, company all hands, and we were going through our core values, and one of our core values is do what's right. Right. It's like, in the end, for all of the grumpiness and, my LinkedIn tag is grumpy beard and all of the rocks I throw at the industry and all the rocks I throw at everybody, it's all rooted in this just desire to see people do better, right? Like for all of the pessimism and cynicism I carry with me, I'm actually relatively an optimist that, if we all keep trying to be better, we'll persevere.
marshmallow rocks. I'm gonna get you a bag of those. You can throw those freely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were chatting a bunch about the compliance piece, and I want to maybe tap further into or double click further into a bit of the conversation around compliance because
Yep.
I feel like a lot of what has been happening with compliance is starting to now happen with AI around, oh, the governance. And again, customers don't seem to care unless they're kind of bound to some kind of compliance regulation or some need in their industry specifically. And I had a great conversation with John Pagluca from Enable in Nashville a couple of weeks ago, where he kind of admitted, he said, I was one of the fools telling people to add another S to their MSP business, and now where everybody, it was not the right thing for most people to do. And so I'm wondering the same about compliance. I'm wondering the same about even this AI enablement and the adoption and the education and the pivot that's maybe necessary to do that properly.
Uh,
Yeah. So have
yeah.
I opened another door to another room that
You,
also lives
you,
rent free in your head?
you have, man, this is so hard. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've got several customers that have come to me and want to stand up OpenClaw, right? Like, oh man, we're reading all about this OpenClaw. It's going to be great. One of them has HIPAA. One of them is trying to drive down the CMMC road,
Wow.
right? And in the end, the customer again treats this as a tool. They're just trying to get a job done, right? And they don't consider the implications from a compliance standpoint of some of the choices that they've made, right? And increasingly, right, as we start talking about value and differentiation, maybe we're solving the problem here live on the air. Uh, I don't want to be the guy that tells a customer no, especially because I like shiny new toys and I very much like to live on the forefront of technology. But man, with great power comes great responsibility. And some of these things absolutely 100% need guardrails, right? So in particular, from the AI standpoint, all of this stuff needs guardrails. And I tell an example of this. I was running OpenClaw for a while, right? I have an AI assistant. It actually has an email address at cnwr.com. You can email it, and it can do things like put things on my calendar and do things like that. And the reason it has an email address is I steadfastly refuse to give it access to my account. Right. So instead, I created a secondary account and gave it delegated access to my calendar so that it can read it like an executive assistant would. Right. Like generally, you wouldn't give your executive assistant
Right.
access to your password. You would give them an account with delegated access. Why would we treat our AI agents literally any differently than that?
Yeah.
But when I was running OpenClaw, we use Stretty internally, which is an EOS tracking tool because we're an EOS shop. And my Stretty, my OpenClaw, and now my new assistant, which runs on Claude Code, they have access to my Stretty. I was on a live webinar with Matt Lee talking about how cool this was, and I was showing off my OpenClaw setup and some of the things it could do. And one of the things I told it is I wanted to add a to-do, and it talks to my Obsidian and make a para and do a bunch of research around building a challenge coin because at some point I want to build a challenge coin to give out to people like you. I log into my Stretty the next day for our leadership team meeting, and I suddenly have a to-do to finalize design of challenge coins. Here's the thing. When I built the skill for Stretty, it was read only.
How did it?
So
Yeah.
OpenClaw went out and said, "Oh, Jason has something he needs to do. I need to make a to-do for this." It went out and it scraped the API docs for Stretty and it wrote a write connector and then wrote a to-do into my Stretty. Yeah, you got one right there. That's the Matt Lee one. I have one of those running around here somewhere. And those things are scary, right? Like in as far as compliance and things like that goes, right? Like you need a policy around what access you're willing to give any of these tools, right? Like there's a whole like we have a ton of compliance in our space, right? We have a ton of compliance frameworks, a ton of policies. I'm partial to CIS because it's very prescriptive for MSPs, right? Like, but CMMC, HIPAA, PCI, they all exist. There's going to be an entire new world around compliance for these other tools and what you can
Yeah.
and can't give them access to, because they are so powerful that even if you give them access to a tool and don't gate that access, they can just go expand their access.
Yeah, this guardrail piece is interesting, and I want to ask you maybe a question about enabling the guardrails testing or experimentation for customers, because I think there's maybe a tendency that MSPs have that until they have it figured out, we're not letting anybody use this or start any initiatives or what have you. But shadow everything, right? And customers, employees are going to be using stuff no matter what you say. In fact, they're already using it, and so there's a couple things. One, the finger pointing liability is going to always almost land on the MSP, no matter whether you said they couldn't or said they could. And so I wonder how you were thinking about this maybe enabled guardrailed experimentation phase or area or tool set that hey, they can actually start doing things without any of the bigger concerns.
Yeah, I mean, as it turns out, business gonna business, and I can put policies and guardrails and provide direction, but we've seen this weird evolution, right? Like even without AI, right? I take away local admin access and you can't install software anymore. But you know what you can do? You can go sign up for a SaaS service that does the same thing that software would,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't have any good easy way to stop that, right? So I took away one potential avenue for you to do this thing you wanted to do. You just pivoted to another avenue, right? Like I fight that right now. I've got several doctors' offices that are HIPAA encumbered, and they use cloud-based EMRs. Right. Like, and I do a lot of work around HIPAA and around making sure that the PHI is protected and all that other stuff. And then they go log into their cloud EMR from home. I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. So from an MSP, right, like I can provide guidance to the business, right, and I can provide those guardrails, but as part of those guardrails, I also protect myself. Whereas if I'm not managing it, I'm not liable for it, right? So like my recommendation is, yeah, this AI stuff's cool and we should be exploring it, right? Like, but we should do it cautiously and with a plan. And I don't want to be the one to say no. And that was the whole conversation in today's all hands meeting is that 100% what you said, we were saying no. We were telling people to not do it. It wasn't ready yet. It's not to the point,
It's
right?
almost
But the
worse.
problem is, yeah, the problem is the ones that I told, several of the ones I told no just went out and found another way to do it, right? They just it. Not only is it not did they not take my no to heart, they just went out and found another provider to do it for them, right?
Yeah.
So I lost opportunity there, which honestly, yeah, sure, that sucks, but in the end, now they're I don't have any ability to vet this third party, right? They're often way down the road of doing it before I even find out about it. And usually I find out about it through some ancillary means where suddenly the provider needs access to something and then they have to tell me. And now
Oh
we're
yeah.
drive down the road where we're 6 months into this project and they've spent $60,000 on this thing and now the client wants to try to integrate it with their 365 environment in a really stupid way.
Yeah. I tell the story regularly of one of my longtime clients. I got a ticket about connecting their Google Workspace to something. I'm like, oh, wonder what that is about. I call in. They're like 8 months in to a NetSuite deployment that I had no clue about.
Yep.
And so I don't know. Maybe part of this is the sense of grandioseness that we all tend to live with and manage in our own worlds of having control. Because like the interesting thing about this is how much control we feel that we need to have of those situations. I wonder if you've grappled with this at all, and how do you measure the right place to give the customer some sense of I don't know agency, if you will.
Yeah, I've this is another thing. You're really good at picking things that I've given a lot of thought and time to. Uh, I've landed on the spot that in the end, I can make recommendations, but it is not my place to tell you no. Right. And so I'm in Evolve in my peer group facilitator has told us that as a leader, I'm responsible for three things, right? I set the culture of the company, right? I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for accurately predicting the future of the company, so forecasting, well, blah, blah, blah. But the third and most important one, the one that's relevant here, I'm relevant in managing the risk of the company.
Hmm.
As a leader, one of my biggest things I do for CNWR is I attempt to manage risk. So what I can do for you is as a user and what I can do for my customers, anyone I interact with, is I can try to help you drive down the road of managing the risk, right? And understanding the risks that you're taking on by doing these things. But in the end, if I explain it to you and you accept the risk and you want to do it, like it's not my place to tell you no. Like there are worlds where I can and I have fired customers over the fact that they're willing to take unacceptable risk because I know that they're going to come back and they're going to try to aim that risk gun at me as soon as it goes sideways, right? But like if you want to go do dumb, who am I to stop you from doing dumb? Right? Like I can tell you that like, hey, if you keep putting your hand that close to that table saw blade, eventually you're going to chop your fingers off, right? Like, but in the end, it's your choice as to whether or not you're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, it's an impossible thing to win, and this is maybe the humanity's issue of just being black or white on most of these things.
Yep.
And like, this is the thing about also getting older. By the way, you're up there with me in the sense that like more and more, I've realized it's about finding comfort in the gray area of things and not so much trying to pick sides because pick sides is just a futile effort, if you will. Well, since we're on the topic of things living rent free in your head, throw one more at me that we can untangle or try to untangle.
Let's see.
Going into your Notion pad to the things that live rent free in your head section.
No, no. I'm trying to think of another good topic here. Oh, I have one, and it's going to be interesting. I have been giving a lot of thought and to the weird way that our industry has a love relationship with events that don't seem to provide a lot of value to the users other than a vacation. How's this topic? Is this one fun?
Oh gosh, maybe right at the intersection of it. You know,
Yeah.
I had a great conversation with Henry Tim about this. I think what it is that most people do not have a plan for a conference. And I think even just at a social engagement level, a conference can be wildly successful for most people if they have a plan or if they're trying to understand, like, what am I trying to achieve by attending this? But this is not maybe the baseline of it. I don't know how you
Yes.
typically what your MO of attending conferences is, aside from when you're speaking at them, which is, well, I guess
Yeah.
all of them, by the way,
Most
most
of
of the
them
time.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But there was probably a time when you were just attending it, and what got you to go is probably, different for every person, but you have to think through it.
Until you know people, right? So until the hallway track exists, because there's a lot of value to the hallway track, but until you know enough people to engage in the hallway track, the value is what you take away from the things you attend, right? The value is the takeaways for me from the learnings, right? And I'll be the first one to admit that I attend few breakout sessions at most conferences I go to these days because I'm tired of hearing the same talk, and it's for better or worse the same talk. It's the same, there's 50 of us speakers that are all giving very similar talks in every single conference generally, or it's a sales pitch. Those are the two categories that we generally have. And there's not a lot of value to that these days. But I don't think it has to be that way, right? Like I think that it's on us as an industry to try to drive more speakers to be in the space, right? Like to try to drive more people spreading value. And in the end, it's why I do things like this, right? It's like I have an innate interest in lifelong learning and in bettering myself, which doesn't happen in our space at our conferences as much as I would like it to. But I also believe that I should also pass that on. And if I'm consuming a lot of knowledge and gaining a lot of knowledge, I should try to give a lot of knowledge. And,
Yeah.
generally we should try to give more than we take. I think that there's a happy medium. If we are going to lean on the social aspect in the hallway track as a primary motivator for people to go to these things, and I also think it's on us as an industry to be as inclusive as we possibly can be to get those new attendees to come to that hallway track and to engage in those social activities. Because I'll tell you what, like on top of I attend conferences in our space and speak at conferences in our space. I attend conferences in the developer space, like the developer relations space. I go to Code Mash. I go to a couple other conferences that are in the developer space, and I go to conferences in the security space. And if I don't know anybody, I go to bed at like 8 p.m. Like you and I have been out at the bar till God knows how long. How long were we at that last Evolve? I mean, I think it was like three.
If
It,
if I
when
recall
we hatched the
correctly,
plan of kids to channel con.
you regretted the time at
Oh,
which we went to bed. So
oh,
there's
and
that.
so did you. I think we both did. Yeah, I think we both heard a little the next morning.
I just blamed you. That's all. I
Yeah.
got off easy.
But if I don't have that, right, and I'm an introvert. You wouldn't believe it, but I'm an introvert. I won't go up and insert myself into a group of people I don't know. And so I think if we're gonna value the social interaction, then we have to do better as an industry at trying
Yeah.
to invite other people to it.
Poor Aaron. We'll make you feel included now. Aaron Hayes comments, try attending tech events and boardroom sessions as a marketer. That's another wake up call. Yeah, no doubt. Difficult for sure. Well, this is interesting too because I remember very distinctly the moment that converted me into a sense of community, and I've told this story a few times over the years. I was joining the Apple Consultants Network, and out of the blue, I got a call from another Consultants Network member in town, I'd never met before, and they said, "Hey, I saw you pop up on the locator. What's up? What's going on? What you working on?" And it was kind of completely out of left field, a little confusing. I didn't know what to do with that. This person became a super incredible mentor to me technically, just running a business. I was like really looked up to him and everything he was doing. And I think this is the thing that got me thinking about how do I give back? How do I go share anything that I've learned, even if it's a little messy around the edges and all those things. And I think it's interesting geographically speaking. This is maybe one of the interesting vantage points that I have that the North American conference goers don't always think about. But in some other geos, people are very much on the take side of this relationship and never kind of seem to convert into, okay, it's my turn to give something back or to contribute or to help build community. There's definitely a very uniquely American, North American sense of what this means. And I don't know how to explain it, but you probably know Vera Tucci. She's told me stories. She puts on this incredible conference in Italy, and she's told me stories that in trying to like do the outreach to get people to come, she had the phone like hung up on her because like why would I go to a place where my competitors are? So like the sense of community is maybe non-existent or just lacking severely. And so I'm curious to ask you simply if you remember distinctly your community pivot, I suppose you call it that.
Uh, in our space, it was probably MSP Geek, right? Like, so I am a child of the internet. I'm an old IRC nerd, right? So I've always been more comfortable in digital communities than in real communities, and then got to know people there, and then got to meet them in real life. It was actually Ray Rossini. He was the first channel person I've really hung out with. I have a client in Miami, so I was down there quarterly. I haven't been down there in a couple of years, but him and I were talking on one of the Discords, and they're like, "Hey, we should do a meetup. I'll grab a couple other local people." And him and Mike Sanders, who I think is still at Kaseya, and a couple other people, we just got together at a Dave and Buster's and played pool for a little bit, right? And I think that was kind of my indoctrination into this thing as a community.
Yeah.
But to speak to your earlier point, I think that what you are experiencing speaks to maturity of the business model in the space, right? So, thinking back and looking back, when I didn't know anything and none of us knew anything, and we were all trying to figure it out, then we all considered what we figured out to be proprietary, right? And the thing that would make our business different and would differentiate us from our peers. And so we didn't want to share it as that homogenizes and man, full circle and comes all the way back around to us largely all delivering relatively similar service models, it becomes a lot easier to realize that there's enough fish for all of us to eat, right? Like, this isn't like you have the customer or I have the customer. It's like you can have that customer. I can go to a different customer. There's plenty of customers, right? There's no scarcity here, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I think it's really naive. Maybe some of those geos there is scarcity and it's a different problem. But I think that once you hit that maturity and you realize that we're all just trying to do the same thing, then that ability to share becomes different. And I ended up on a call with Peter Melby earlier this week, and this exact topic came up. I think at some point or another, it causes the industry to pivot from vendors and being the ones that drive a lot of this stuff to us, the MSPs being the ones that drive a lot of these best practices and things. And I think it changes the entire way the industry operates. And I think that we are right now starting to go through that potentially metamorphosis here, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
people aren't going to some of these shows because they don't want to see the same old vendor talk where, vendor X is trying to convince you how to sell their products as an add-on because you know what, most of us don't do that anymore, right? Like we sell a stack of things and I'm not selling, backup as an incremental add-on to my service anymore. So your marketing material on how to properly position backups to my clients, I don't need that anymore. It's just part of the service I sell.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
will say that, the from the vendor vantage point, one of the interesting things is that and I've asked Peter Kujawa this question from ConnectWise when I had him on the podcast. I said, "Do you ever not get tired of like repeating the same thing over and over and over again?" And he had a great equalizing response to it because he said, what's really cool about this industry is that there's always new entrants.
Yeah.
What's even more interesting is like how the maturity level of the new entrants is always fairly low. Like nobody's going to come in at
Hmm.
this like
No.
really 30,000
100%.
foot
Yeah.
view. And so I think it's incumbent on everybody to figure out how to prop them up and help raise the
Hmm.
standard. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's easy for somebody who's been in the industry a long time to forget what it was like to get
Yep.
started and be literally
I,
at ground zero of knowledge, ground zero of ops and
yeah.
capabilities. And like,
I don't forget, right? And part of what drives me to try to teach is the fact that I was so thankful to those people that were willing to, in MSP Geek, I was so thankful to those people that were willing to share, right? And those people that were willing to give, that I feel like I would be a complete jerk if I wasn't willing to be one of those people to try to give to the next one, right? Like as part of our CyberEyes thing on the MSP 911 side, right, where we take MSPs that have had breaches and kind of coach them. It's probably fair to say that the maturity of these MSPs trends low in many cases, not always, but it oftentimes trends low. And what I've come to realize is by almost every measure that I see, there are 30-ish thousand MSPs to 60,000, depending on what you call an MSP and how you count it, right? But it's a large number of MSPs in this space. If you assume for a second that the Kaseya event, the Enable event, and the ConnectWise event have zero overlap, I'm just going to say zero. There are about 2,000 MSP attendees in each of those, and they are the most likely shows that you would see an MSP attend. If you use that value, then at most 20% of our MSPs are regularly attending conferences, which means that the other 80% are not participating in this
hmm,
and they're not consuming that knowledge that we all share.
yeah, that's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Anne Westerheim, just to bring back a quick comment she made on the hallway track. I think showing up to sessions to support other speakers helps the industry. Asking questions engaging encourages more people to get to know each other and get to take part in the hallway track for sure.
Yeah.
It's
That's my
not.
exception.
Yeah, and it's not easy for everybody. And this is, it's so great that I think that people find their way kind of through the hallway track and the social aspect when maybe the tech was the thing that they felt they were a little bit of an imposter syndrome, or they had something to share and it was somebody like Kyle did to you to encourage you to go
Yep.
talk about it because there's something, some passion or some level of experience that you've had with it that everybody else could learn something from, and that's neat. And so I kind of maybe want to bring this all back full circle to the original topic, which is we were discussing whether this maybe race to AI, the tier one
Hmm.
help desk and the service baseline, because that's really what we're talking about here is tier one,
Yep.
is maybe yay or nay in your book at the moment, how you're thinking about it.
The so we are and will continue to use AI tools to make the humans more efficient, right? Like, no one in the end, tier one people don't like doing help desk reset, like password reset tickets, right? So there is an opportunity to offset that. But I believe that in the high level idea, replacing that human interaction just normalizes the very thing that every single one of us hates. Every single MSP out here has to deal with a vendor. Every single MSP out here has to call Comcast at some point or another for one of their clients. And every single MSP out here hates being on the other end of that AI driven chatbot that you get at Comcast on the phone or on the chat now, right? So I take and I pitch this stuff to my team all the time. Why should we be providing a level of service that we would be in our own internal Slack or Teams complaining about if we received? Right. So to me, it's nay. Like I have no plans to replace level one help desk. I'll use it for help with triaging, maybe dispatching, and making those tier one people more efficient and maybe lightening their load for some of the easy workflows. But if I can't completely automate it, a human is probably going to touch a ticket. And if the client is getting contacted, a human is always in that loop. And, 9 months from now, that may change, but that's presently how I feel about it.
Yeah. Totally tangential, but maybe relevant is, and I had a great chat with Alex Farling and Wes at some point, or Kyle, about, especially since they're in the maybe training, the upskilling side of things, the role of T1, or the role just of gaining industry experience or unique knowledge around these things that are being replaced by the bots. Like, where does this go? And I, as a MSP that's purportedly growing, trying to grow, how do you think about the supply chain of people and talent to your business? This must be something that is surely another one of those living rent free in your head bullet
Yeah.
points.
This has, I mean, this conversation is completely not tech related. It's completely related to literally every space in our industry that is slowly being
Yeah.
supplanted by AI, right? So two things, right? Like I asked a Microsoft exec about AI that if AI is trained on human knowledge and we start creating all knowledge with AI, then what will AI learn on, first of all? Second of all, right? Like there's been all these instances where people are talking about AI at these commencement speeches and they're all getting booed. Yeah, of course they're getting booed. Like we've basically created a gap in our industry here where like the number of entry level jobs is plummeting down to near zero in a lot of these industries. But how do you get experience and how do you get to be a tier two without ever being a tier one? And honestly, I think that eventually, right, like this isn't the first time that happens. Like people were having like in-person town hall versions of this when the Steam engine came around, right? Like this is just the latest iteration. People were having conversations when the printing press came around. Like an entire industry of people that used to hand copy books went away when we could suddenly print books, right? Like this is no different. It's just one of the few times, and Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about it at the Denver Beyond. He said this is the first time that in reality automation has come for blue collar jobs. They've traditionally been safe, and automation has supplanted or white collar jobs. It's supplanted blue collar jobs for years, right? But now it's coming for knowledge workers. And I think that eventually education will have to catch up. And what happens is the floor of knowledge you gain in education drops you into tier two. But in the meantime, there is an entire huge generation. And the funny thing is Mustafa, when you're in the chat there, he is one of my students from the class I taught last fall. And I had this tough conversation with them. It is the case that that group of students that's coming out of college now and probably up to a half a generation from now is in a really tough place because the job will stop looking like a funnel and start looking like a diamond,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I
Yeah.
wanted to challenge you maybe a bit on this construct of the T1 and T2 as kind of
Mhm.
a serial situation, right? And this is I get to the point of a conversation I had with John Pagluca. He said, a lot of what they're doing at Enable, for example, is reimagining the org structures to some extent. And
Yep.
I think MSPs would be silly not to rethink their org
Mhm.
structures, or to at the very least stop or start questioning whether these very serial career ladders are the thing that makes sense when knowledge is
Yep.
kind of multifaceted, like you say. But tell me more about this diamond concept. Explain that.
Well, so the traditional job funnel is there's a whole lot of low skilled workers, right? That and then a medium amount of mid skilled, mid tier workers, and then a small number of high knowledge, like top end workers. Where we seem to be driving to now is automation and AI is replacing that low tier workers. So now we have few entry level low tier jobs, but still a ton of middle management jobs, right? And AI is an enabler. It makes you better. It's a tool, right? Like, but if you give an idiot, it, if you give an unskilled worker, somebody that doesn't know anything, AI, then you just get 10 times the amount of not knowing,
Yeah,
right? Because Dunning-Kruger is definitely a thing. And so the question is, right, like how do you get to that middle tier of knowledge without going through that lower tier of knowledge? And I don't know the solution to that problem.
well, first of all, look at you being all politically correct with your choice of words. But
Yeah.
secondly, here's Mustafa saying, I've never met a client while working level one service desk that wants to speak to AI for customer service support or troubleshooting, a level zero help desk for password resets, account unlocks, and service orders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this
And I think
is,
he works at the service desk at the university I teach at.
yeah, yeah,
Like yeah. So AI replaces self-service, right? Like,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, sure, that's great. Like we are AI processing a lot of offboarding tickets these days, right? Like a human doesn't touch them. Like there's a human in the loop. They have to approve it. So, but literally the only thing we do is it's like it looks up all the accounts and says this human, it looks like this human was terminated by this email. These are the things they have access to, and then you just hit approve and it does it all,
yeah.
right? But I mean that's a thing that previously might have taken a tier one or a lower level tech, I don't know, a couple hour or an hour to do, right? And now it's handled. But again, to his point, those are self-service tasks generally, right? So I
Sure.
think that where you'll see me drive to is you'll see me driving to enabling the end users to self-service more, right? Like, but not like probably not via like a conversational interface, right? Like, or uh,
Hmm.
it, and I'll probably still keep a human in a loop because man, the big problem, the other big problem with LLMs that no one considers is they're non-deterministic. So they don't always do the same thing the same way every time,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know, it's real tough.
Well, super interesting things to unpack further, man. I appreciate you making a bit of time to have a chat,
Yeah.
especially after you're probably, dead inside your head after a company all hands and all these things that really test a bit of your, um, what's the word I'm looking
Yeah.
for? Capacity,
It
long day. So thank you.
it's been a week of meetings. I have been on the phone or on a webinar or Zoom call like pretty much all week, and you are the end of my week, and I am glad to spend the end of my week with you, friend.
Yes, sir. Well, I will be seeing you very soon in a hallway
Yep.
track near you.
Yep.
Aaron Hayes sending us off by saying, "So you still think there is confusion between AI and automation? Oh, at the customer
No.
level?
Oh no. At the customer level, 100%.
Yeah,
Like, but the customer doesn't care.
yeah,
Customer just wants the job done, and they call it AI, but it's in almost every case automation.
yeah." And also a closing comment from Anne says, "An attorney at a Boston firm said it well. We're not replacing junior attorneys with AI, because today's junior attorneys become tomorrow's senior attorneys." Yeah, it's interesting to think of that progression as a reason not to just immediately hand
Hmm.
off all those things to AI. But, cost efficiencies, right?
Yeah.
Six,
But
seven.
until the subsidized tokens go away, and then they may not be any cheaper. And you just did it. I can't believe you did it. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, that's a whole different discussion we can have in the hallway track next time about how uh, basically that cost savings is subsidized right now, and eventually it'll go away.
Yeah. to the point of the pricing transparency. Man, we need a 3-hour session the next time. Again, thank you, Jason. Hang out backstage for 2 secs
Yep.
while I kick off this outro. Thanks everybody for joining. We're here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, unless we're not. Until next time, I'm Luis, your host at MSP Confidential. We'll see you all soon. Ciao.
Peace.